how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't lie!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
For this episode, I chat on the phone with Stephanie Rose. Stephanie Rose works for News12 Long Island as a traffic correspondent. We have a wonderful conversation about the news world, how it works for her, down to the technicalities of the green screen, which is just fascinating to me. She's also an incredibly mindful human who practices meditation daily and posts about it regularly on her Instagram, which you can find the handle in the bio. I hope that you can take something away from this conversation, as I most certainly did. So keep on keeping on and enjoy. We're back. I'm Clayton Howe, and today with me on the phone is Stephanie Rose. Stephanie, thank you for taking the call today.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So we're talking right now. It's 3:04 p.m. on a weekday, and your bedtime is fast approaching.
Yes. I'm already in my pajamas and my bathrobe. It's 3 p.m. Do you know where your bathrobe is? Is kind of like what I like to say. Yep.
And that's because you get up at what time?
1:30 in the morning. I work the morning show currently at News12 Long Island, so I have to be at the studio by 3:30 in the morning to do hair, makeup, which we all do by ourselves, by the way. We don't. A lot of smaller news stations, people always say to me, "Oh, do you have like people who do it for you?" No, I'm that person. I do it for myself. Very common in the smaller news organizations. So it takes a little while to do that, and then we're live on air at 5 in the morning. And I get up at 1:30 so that I can sort of do my morning, believe it or not, do my morning routine, or at least a very shortened version of it, before I leave for work.
What's your morning routine, or the shortened version?
Yeah, so when I was working a 9 to 5 shift, it's much longer. But the truncated version of it is First, beyond first is coffee. I can't actually open my eyes without sitting and drinking coffee for about 30 minutes. Like, I need to drink it slowly so that it fully hits my bloodstream, and then I'm like ready to go.
Okay.
That's like the first form of consciousness. So like my morning routine is all about like awakening my consciousness, my awareness. I'm very into yoga, meditation, mindfulness. So like everything I do is in a sort of mindful way. And then I actually exercise, believe it or not. So 1:30 to 2, everything's scheduled out. 1:30 to 2 is coffee. 2 to 2:30, I do 30 minutes of high intensity interval training. So just like quick circuits of repeated exercises in my living room. I couldn't possibly go to a gym at 2 in the morning. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And then for 11 minutes after that, because again, everything has to be shortened in this time frame, I perform some kind of breath work or meditation, depending on what I'm using as a practice at the time. So currently, I do a meditation called alternate nostril breathing, which is a very balancing breath work and meditation for anxiety, which is something we all experience in the news industry and human being in general. So I just find that it's a very good way to ground myself before I actually go out into the world and start my day. I do a little journaling, just a couple of minutes, shower, and then leave. No makeup. My hair is a mess. God forbid I have to stop at a 7-Eleven for gas or something and somebody sees me at that dark early hour. I look like a monster.
Okay, so you and I promise I didn't only get out of this coffee, but I am curious. What kind of coffee are you having? Are you just doing a regular like drip brew thing, or is it like
yeah. No. I'm a straight black normal drip coffee. I don't do the bulletproof. I don't do any kind of milk or creamer or tone it down. And I just like really want to get it right into my veins, the caffeine, just straight.
Okay.
And that's, I hate to say this because it probably goes a little against what people would think about someone who lives a healthy lifestyle, which I consider myself to be. But I actually, that's only my first cup of coffee.
That's funny. Now, do you add sugar or anything to it, or you said it's black?
No, black
All day.
No sugar and no cream, no nothing. All black all day. I depending on the day, could probably drink. What's a cup, right? Like cups are like all different for different people.
Yeah.
I go with like ounces. I probably drink like, I don't know, 30, maybe more ounces of coffee a day. Oh God.
Wow.
That's terrible to say out loud. But you know what though?
What?
I'm a real believer in biochemical individuality, like biological, like everybody's body is different and can tolerate things differently. And for me, I've been drinking coffee since I was like 13, and like it keeps me awake in the morning for sure, but I have no problem going to sleep at night. And I find it just gives me a little bit of the extra brain power and like keeps me going, especially through such a demanding early shift.
For real. Yeah. Has the discipline gotten any easier to wake up for that demanding early shift?
Yeah. I mean, I think that anything when you have to do something, at first it can be hard and you face resistance, but it's like building any other kind of habit. It just becomes a habit. The discipline starts you off on the path of building the habit, and you use the discipline as a tool when you're not as willing to do it. It's when you more so have to muscle yourself into it. And then over time, I find anyway, I don't need the discipline as much. I don't need to make myself get up when the alarm goes off. It's time to get up. This is now an ingrained habit. This is now just what you do. And that's, I think, how you truly affect lifestyle change. You use the discipline. You have to use the structure for as long as you have the resistance. But then once the resistance goes away, it's just part of your life, if that makes sense.
Is the resistance going away because you're doing it longer, or is this part of like a meditation and a thought process that you are consciously thinking about?
Well, I think that it's a little bit of both. I think that you have to consciously choose to let go of your resistance if you ever want to overcome like a difficult thing such as waking up so early.
Yeah.
If every day that I woke up, I woke up and said to myself, "Oh, this is so hard. I hate this. I'm so tired. I can't do this." Think about like where that sets the tone for your mental state, and then even for your energy. You're wrapped up in that sort of negative thinking from the start. If I wake up and I say, well, this is just what I do, even if I'm tired, and there are some days that I'm really tired today, but this is my life, and this is my routine, and this is just what I'm doing. There's less mental resistance, and then I just find that actually I feel less tired. Actually, I'm able to start the day. Actually, I'm okay working out at 2 a.m. I thought it was something that I wouldn't possibly be able to do before I started trying to add it in the morning. I used to try to do it after when I get home from work, but I was too tired. But as soon as I made the decision to just do it, it became easier. We overlook the simplicity of just making a decision and sticking to it.
Yeah.
And if that's the decision, then that's the decision. That's just what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, we can make so many excuses or stories.
Exactly.
It's like stories
Exactly.
we tell ourselves. How long?
Exactly, and those stories undermine you.
They really, I mean, they do. Yeah, they definitely do, or they can. How long have you been with News 12?
I have been with the company for over 6 years now, and I've been on air on News 12 for 4 years.
Did you want to go into journalism as a kid? Was this a path you always wanted?
What's interesting, actually, is it's definitely a story of, I guess I would say, a path I didn't think I was choosing, but sort of looking back was choosing along the way. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be
Okay.
I definitely wanted to be on TV. I could tell you that's the line that kind of connects everything.
Yeah.
Big in the drama club. I was the president of the drama club, both in high school and college. I was actually inducted into my college in Poughkeepsie, their Theater Hall of Fame for everything that I did. Yeah, my name's on a plaque in the theater at my college, which is kind of cool when I zoom out and think about it.
What did you study at college?
So I wanted to study theater because, again, I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
But my parents said to me, get a real job. Like, we won't support this. We won't support this because we don't think it's like a real career path, which in retrospect is kind of sad a little bit. And, like, I feel like something I learned when I, in the future, have kids, like, never tell a kid that, like, they can't do something that they have a passion for, because then you're just kind of, like, injecting this sudden self-doubt. And I believed it, and I kind of bought into it, and I said, yeah, maybe they're right. I'd never succeed as an actor was my belief. So I chose radio, TV, and film and communications as my major because my rationalization was, it's the next closest thing, and my parents will accept this as like a real career path. and maybe, it's a way for me to take that desire to be an actor, be a performer, an entertainer, and translate it into what they see is appropriate. So I did study journalism and radio, and at the time they said radio's dead, which, Lord, if they only knew podcasts were coming, I would have been in a much better position with that, right? Like, that wasn't around when I was in college. So I ended up studying what I ended up doing, but almost in a sort of like backwards way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then you graduate college and you are applying to radio and television stations?
So another one of those, I think as I tell the story of like my career trajectory, there's a lot of like seemingly fate or happenstance that comes along that makes things all connect, because when I did graduate college, I did start applying, but as many college graduates know, how insanely difficult it is to actually get a job when you graduate from college.
Oh, yeah.
I found myself from May when I graduated to October, and I still hadn't successfully gotten a job, and I had applied to many different film and TV, and so then at that point, I just started applying to anything. And I ended up getting a job as an office manager at a dentist's office because they said to me, you have good teeth, you have a good smile. Like, yeah, you're hired. Which
Perfect.
was like the best thing I could hope for as a college graduate with a very expensive degree. And my parents are like, what are you doing? But it was all I could get, right?
Right.
Well, my parents were at a wake for like a distant relative. And they're seeing all these distant Italian relatives. And they start talking to one they haven't spoken to in years. And he tells them that he works for Women's Entertainment Television, which is WeTV.
Oh.
And they say, whoa, wait a second. Our daughter is currently an office manager at a dentist's office, but we paid a lot of money to send her to school for TV. So, like, can you help us? So he brings my resume in to WeTV, Women's Entertainment, for an entry-level job in the on-air promotions department, which I ended up getting, and after about 2 months at the dentist's office, left the dentist to start my first job in TV, which was WeTV.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that part. So how long were you at WeTV?
So WeTV was an interesting job because, again, it was entry-level, and I was young in my early 20s. And my job was literally to schedule the on-air promos, and on-air promos, like commercial for a show, for anyone who doesn't know. It's, where it says, tonight on Bridezilla, this girl loses her mind. Watch it at 8, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
My job was to literally schedule when these would air on a daily basis. That was my only job, just to do this. It was very boring, very boring.
I can imagine.
And I was there for 2.5 years,
Okay.
2.5 years doing very boring, tedious work. But then over time, the job just became, there was nowhere really for me to go, and it wasn't ever really what I had imagined I'd be doing. So I ended up finding a similar job, but it had a little more production management to it at Fox News Channel. So I applied to that job and left WeTV to go work for Fox News Channel in the city, not local Fox, but the national news channel.
Yeah. And
so that was my next leap. And that's where I made the transition from like regular TV to news for the first time.
Okay. And then what was the transit? Was Fox right before News 12, or was there another
Nope,
position?
that was it. Yeah. So I worked at Fox for about 3 years.
Right.
Also scheduling promos, but also managing the production department. And all this time now, keep in mind, I'm behind the scenes. I'm completely not even thinking about being on air or being on TV, because at this point I had already accepted the message from my parents, which was like, you can't do that. That's not like a real thing. And I think they didn't mean it in like a malicious way, just like a general, like, oh, that seems too unreachable kind of way for like any average person. So, and I didn't dream or think anything about that. So I ended up leaving Fox for an office manager position at News 12 because, to be honest, I'm a Long Islander, and most Long Islanders hate leaving Long Island. So I wanted to get back onto Long Island.
What were you learning at Fox and the Women's Entertainment Network when you're working behind the scenes? What are the things you're witnessing of the people who are maybe on air or on television?
Well, I think more so than that, I think the biggest things I learned at those jobs was, if you want to succeed, especially in this business, but I think it's true of any business, you really have to work much harder than you think you do. And
it's so true.
Yeah, like at first, at first you walk in there, you're young, you're like, I deserve the world. And then you suddenly realize that like nobody agrees with you.
Right.
Nobody agrees.
Oh my God.
And it's a competitive industry. It's a very cutthroat industry. And it's the kind of industry where when people get into their positions, they'll stay there until they die.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You're kind of like working against a lot of different things in this scenario. And Fox especially, I had a boss who was a really tough boss. Yeah. He was like a combination of kind and funny and smart and like mean and nasty and hard. And I'll never forget like him one day lecturing me saying, the universe doesn't revolve around you. Like everything that's happening here at Fox isn't like to serve you. And it was like, and it was mean, but it was like also kind of like true. And like what I needed to realize that, you have to put some of that sense of youthful entitlement aside and prove yourself and pay your dues and work really hard if you even have a hope of getting anywhere.
Yeah. Well,
Period.
Yeah. Now, did you independently apply to News 12, or was that another friend of a friend thing or another funeral?
Not a funeral. But actually, as it does happen, a friend of mine from Fox News Channel left Fox News Channel and went to News 12. And definitely, I will say, and I think this is true of most industries, knowing someone there really helps you get your foot in the door a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And, you can get your foot in the door, you can get the interview, but then once you're in the interview, you have to get the job, right?
Right.
So a friend of mine passed my resume to the HR department, but then I got interviewed in like a gauntlet style interview. For some reason, my boss, who's my current boss, decided to have every single manager interview me at once. And it was like me in a room of like 7 managers who all happen to be men, like sitting across the other side of the table. Like, can you handle this job? Well, I guess if I can handle this interview, I can handle this job.
Oh my
because my
God.
job would it was insane, because my job would then be to interface with everybody. Like, when you're in this position of sort of office management, you have to deal with everyone. Like, I joke around with people, but I'm like best friends with the CEO, and like, but I'm also dealing with the newest hire, like helping them find their footing and all this stuff. So you really have to have this like vast skill to handle it. So I think he kind of knew that. He kind of wanted to test me, and I passed the test, and I got that job. And that was over 6 years ago.
You know, it's funny, and I see this in a lot of fields of entertainment. Even like the nicest people on TV, or the most unassuming, strong kind of personality people that you see on TV, the ones who really make it are like they have a strong personality behind the scenes, and they are willing to make an independent decision, back up their decision, and take responsibility for their decision. Even if on TV or on screen, they're, little old me, like in any field. So that's really interesting, that they have, not interesting. It makes a lot of sense that would be a situation you'd have to go through, before they have you on air. You gotta, back up yourself.
Well, I just stumbled into the on-air role, though. That was never part of like what I applied for or how I got in there, or any even like glimmer of what I thought I'd be doing when I started there at News 12 either. So that's another one of those, like the funeral situations that just sort of like presented itself. That they also say this in show business, because I know you're in show business, and it's like a mixture of like luck, being in the right place at the right time, and being the right person for the role, right?
Yeah.
So like, it has to be the combination of all those things. Otherwise, it never happens. And that's why you can audition 1,000 million times and never get a part. And you start to doubt yourself. But it has nothing to do with you. It has to be the math has to be there, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I was sitting at my desk doing my office managing job, assuming nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit right outside of the studio. And the studio manager needed someone to sit at the anchor desk so he could test some new lighting designs he wanted to try for the show.
Cool.
So I'm sitting there in a black skull T-shirt, like ripped jeans, at my desk, because that's me when I'm not on air. And he's like, "Hey, Stephanie, can you just sit there?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, why not?" I walk into that studio, I sit down, and I look out into the lights and into the cameras, and for just a brief moment, I say to myself, this is what I had always wanted.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, here I am. It's like just for a test, but oh my gosh, I feel the feeling. And this is like, if you buy into any of the spiritual manifesting kind of, stuff, that's big there. You have to feel the emotion of it actually happening to like send that energy out that's going to like create the conditions for it to happen, if that makes sense.
That does. Yeah.
So I sit there, and then I start smiling and laughing and joking with another guy he had pulled into the studio to be like my fake co-anchor, and acting like I'm on TV, like I'm like Ron Burgundying it up, like, And he comes out of the control room and he says, "Hey, Stephanie, you look good on camera. Have you ever thought about being on air? Have you ever thought about being on TV?" I look at him, I go, I've thought of it. Yeah, I've thought of it a couple times.
Yeah.
And it ends up working out again, just right place, right time, that they needed someone to fill in as a traffic reporter for the traffic anchor. They had a person who used to fill in, left, went to another station. So this guy Lou shows the tape to the news director and says, I think she would be good. Why don't we let her try out? Why don't we let her do a demo? Why don't we do this? And they actually come to me and say, do you want to try out? Do you want to do a demo for traffic reporting? And I say to myself, traffic reporting? What the heck is that? Like, what? That's weird. Like, looking at a map, knowing directions, like nothing. It's one of those things where, like, in all my fantasies of what I imagined myself doing, somehow traffic reporting never made it in there,
Yeah.
into the roster.
Oh my goodness. So they approach you and you're going to do this tryout. What does it entail?
So it entails me sort of crash course studying the map of the 200-mile long Long Island. They call it Long Island for a reason. It's freaking huge.
Yeah.
And the roads, and understanding, at least at this point, like a very brief overview understanding. And then standing in front of the green screen in the studio, which is where I do the reports from now, and doing a fake, doing basically a demo, a fake report with the green screen, speaking in like a dress. I look at that. I still have that demo. I look at that demo, and it's like absolute cringe-worthy sensations run through my body when I watch it now, years later.
Yeah.
But what I can see too, which is what I think that they saw, was the potential. I was able to stand and speak and smile. And because of my years in theater, that mentality of being in the show, almost like the show must go on.
Yeah.
If I would slip up a word, or if I would, the biggest thing when you're performing or when you're public speaking is you can't get flustered by your own self. You have to keep going. The show must always go on no matter what.
Yes.
Right? So the ability to stand there and mess up a word or flub a word or look a little less than perfect, but just smile. My mentor said to me at the time, smile through the pain. When it's painful, when you mess up, when it's bad, smile even wider. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I learned how to be a traffic reporter by doing it live on air. And so there was a lot of stumbling through that whole process. But so, they watch the demo and they actually say to me, yeah, we see potential. Do some more training and then do another one, and then we'll see if you're ready. I do about 2 more weeks of training. I do another demo. They say you're ready. I was not ready. I was
my God.
not ready.
How long was it from you're ready to on air?
Like a week.
Wow. Oh my
they said
goodness.
you're ready, and I wasn't ready. Like I'm not exaggerating when I say I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I didn't know the roads that well. I knew them enough. I'll never forget the first moments on air. The woman I fill in for, she was there, to back me up and teach me. And my whole body was shaking so hard that I think you could hear it in my voice. Like my teeth were going to chatter because I was so nervous. The lights, I'm in the studio. I've got a microphone on me. There's a big camera in my face. But somehow I was nervous because I was worried about my own performance and worried about myself. But looking into that camera, I was never nervous. I always felt comfortable with the camera. I just was like, oh my God, I'm going to screw this up completely. This is going to be terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. What now? Okay. So anyone who knows a little bit about news, like broadcasting, realizes that that's a green screen behind you. There's not actually moving images behind you.
Correct.
I'm curious though, what are the challenges of working with a green screen? Where are you looking to see if your hand is not blocking exit 70, whatever?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how they set it up, and this is a question I do often get asked. You have 2 monitors on the sides of you, so off camera on the side that you have to kind of cheat to look at. When you're looking into the lens, where there would be a teleprompter in a traditional, news camera, it's actually the show. It's actually a mirror image of you. Oh. But here's where the confusion is. It's the mirror. It's the opposite. So you have to translate in your brain that like what you're seeing yourself doing is the opposite of what you're actually doing, and have like the mental coordination to sort of feel it out. So as I'm talking, when it looks like, and you'll notice this, anyone look at a weatherman next time you see a weatherman, when it looks like they're looking off to the side, like at the map, they're actually looking off to the side at the monitor where they can see themselves against the green screen.
Is that a mirror?
And that's how you point. That's not. No, that's the same. But,
okay.
But you're actually looking off to the side, not at the map. But you cheated. You cheat, just like in theater. You cheat your body. You cheat the way you look at the monitor, looking at the map and not the monitor.
Yeah.
It's a little cheat there.
Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like traffic, out of all subjects in the news, morning news, that seems to be the most up in the air. You know, like by the time you go live at 5, you know what the temperature is going to be that day. That's not changing. Yep. And then I guess like the anchors as well, they've, looked over the teleprompter. They know what they're going to be talking about in the general outline. So how are you navigating the immediate change of a crash on Route 111?
Okay, very nice. Route 111. Is that Wheeler Road? What town are we talking?
I don't know. I just said Route 111. Don't get me to lying.
You were good. You were good. I'm just testing you.
Yeah.
Seeing if you're ready. You're not ready. It's the essence of chaos. It's the essence of you're really. Yeah, I'm the only one who's running around like a maniac during the show, while everyone else gets to just do their thing, and it can be a little bit exhausting. So, in some stations, New York City stations, for example, there's usually a traffic producer who helps you gather the information. Now, they have to do the whole tri-state, which is definitely a lot more territory to cover.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing Long Island, but that's what makes us hyper local, and I can get into the nitty gritty of the smaller roads that a larger station could never talk about, because they just wouldn't have the time. I have about 30 seconds to a minute for every report, 30 seconds usually, and we're talking about 200 miles of roads, right? So,
whoa.
So it's a lot. So in the city stations, they usually have a producer who helps you gather the info. I am both the producer and the reporter, and this is very true of most smaller stations. So it's my job in between my live hits. I have about 6 live hits an hour, so every 10 minutes or so, give or take, I go live. And in between each of those hits, I'm checking the New York State Department of Transportation cameras. I'm calling the police department. I'm looking at Google Maps. I'm watching other stations. I'm listening to the radio. I'm doing like 25 25 different things to try to gather information from every source.
Whoa.
And you have to get fast. You have to have, and this is where another part of where my theater training really helped me, you have to have instant memorization skills.
Yes.
Because you have to be able to look at, there are so many times where like I get time cues in my ear to say, okay, you've got 2 minutes until your next hit. I'll see something happen right then on the road, something big, and I have to instantly memorize what town it is, what road, what exit, what's happening. Yeah. And I can turn that around and go live on air and say, okay, we've got a truck on the parkway on the northern state at exit 36. It's westbound. All lanes are closed. You're going to have to take the LIE instead, like in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So if we traffic reporters stumble or stutter, give us a break.
Yeah. It's because you just found out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so fascinating. Wow. Okay, so
it's intense. It's intense.
Since you've been doing this, how has it gotten easier? Is it just your nerves getting easier, or is it a general memorization of the maps getting easier, or repetition, you get better?
Yeah, I think it's all those things. I think the nerves went away after, the first few months. So that was no longer really an issue. I don't ever get nervous anymore. I sometimes think, oh God, I hope I remember what I'm about to say, or I'm standing there and I don't remember. And if I don't remember, I just don't say it. It's better to be another thing I learned from my crazy fox boss, it's better to be slower and right than fast and wrong. Okay? It's better to be slower and right than fast and wrong in like everything.
Yeah.
So if I don't know, I just won't say it, and I just wait till the next report. But yes, I think with repetition, with time, now I've really learned. I am a geography expert of Long Island. I really learned the towns, the roads. I stare at these maps every morning. Different things pop up. I learn the patterns. There's very similar patterns every day, so that I can then start to see anomalies in the patterns of what usually happens on a typical day. So then you can spot things quicker. And then my memorization has become faster and better. My ability to speak fast, to make it in the 30 seconds, has become better. I really have that ability to go, you ever listen to 1010 Wins or like those news radio stations and how fast they speak on the traffic reports? That's definitely an acquired skill, which I've cultivated as well. So yeah, it's time, it's repetition, it's building a skill and a habit just like anything else. But you have to have the prerequisites. I don't think that if I didn't have the theater training, if I didn't have that ability to keep going, if I didn't have the memorization to begin with, I'm not sure it's something that you can learn per se and apply to this particular field.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a quick question before we change topics. Is there an intersection on Long Island that gets the most accidents?
Okay, so there's a...
That's such a loaded laugh.
Yeah, because there's a lot of them. There are places on pretty much all the parkways where accidents happen almost every day. Like I could tell you on every road, on the LIE, on the northern state, on the southern state, where there will probably be an accident today, because it's literally the way the roads were designed. They're just very bad entrance and exit ramps and things like that. But there's a section of the Southern State Parkway in Nassau County, which has been, this is a terrible name, and I'm sorry, but it's called Blood Alley because it is a stretch of the Southern States between about Valley Stream and Wantagh, Seaford, where there are so many accidents all the time, and there have been so many really terrible accidents because of the way the road is designed. So, yeah, avoid the Southern State. What can I tell you?
Yeah, that's going to be your quote at the end of this conversation. Avoid the Southern State.
Yeah.
When did your journey into mindfulness and meditation come about? Had it been this whole time, navigating all these jobs?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So I think that I've always been a person who has struggled to some degree with some level of anxiety. It's just something that even as a kid, I had a little bit of it. And as time went on, I think we all live in a very stressful modern world.
Yeah.
As I grew up and as I got into news and TV and adult life and all these things which have intense pressure and levels of intensity that are much higher than the average job in some ways. Well, not other jobs, like we're not curing cancer here, but there is a lot of stress.
Yeah, there is.
I think unmanaged anxiety began to grow into what, before I was even on air, actually, is when I really started experiencing stress and panic attacks, and almost crippling panic attacks that would make me think, when I first experienced them, because I'd never had them before, that I actually had something physically wrong with me. Like I was having a heart attack or I was having an asthma attack, because there were physiological symptoms, and it was the culmination of years and years and years of unmanaged stress that just sort of one day in my early 20s exploded. And I was at News12 at the time, but it was in my first few years there.
Yeah. And it was a thought of oh my God, I got to change something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'd always dabbled in yoga and meditation and mindfulness. But at this time, when I started experiencing this, I went to my doctor and he said, I want to put you on mood stabilizers and Xanax and this and that. And I just felt inherently, I'm not an anti-med person. I think that for many people who have real chemical imbalances, it can really help them. I've seen it help people. But for me, at the time, I just intuitively knew that this was more of a condition of my life and my lifestyle and not so much like a chemical imbalance. So I felt I needed a lifestyle approach to managing it. And because I knew a little bit about yoga and meditation at the time, I decided instead of taking the medication to commit to practicing meditation, even though I didn't know anything like really in depth about it. All I knew was this is something that can help me. I started meditating every day, and I've never had a panic attack since that time in my life.
Wow. How? Okay. Okay. All right. So I got a few questions with this. How has your energy changed since you started meditating?
Well, I think that the energy is such a very
Broad.
big topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that my energy, I still experience anxiety. But meditation has taught me enough about myself, about it's weird. Like, I think a lot of people, we all walk around as like strangers to ourselves and strangers to our own minds. And we then just kind of get like run by the chaos of the unruled thoughts and feelings and emotions. Meditation allowed me to get to know myself in a way where I really began to understand the inner workings of my own mind and see the way my own mind can manipulate me into the anxious states. So once I was able to begin to see that, I was able to begin to redirect that and affect changes by self-awareness. So that self-awareness has given me an ability to stay much calmer in general and to call on like these tools when things start to feel more unmanageable. And my energy overall has become much calmer and much more sensitive. I'm more sensitive to how much power thoughts and emotions and feelings, not just for me, but for everyone around me, how much power they hold. And sometimes I can feel that power much more strongly, I think, than ever before, because I can tune into it and I can sense it. Meditation builds your sense, your sensations, you're tuning into all that, your sensitivity, if that makes sense. So you become much more energetically sensitive, but at the same time, calmer on the whole, and able, again, in the news and in stressful environments, to use what you learn when you're on the mat meditating in your real life.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if there's a way to combine, and I love the way you just described that. I wonder if there's a way to combine that with the news.
Well, I'm trying to do that actually a little bit. I am trying to do that on a very local scale. Like I've taken, the news has given me a platform to reach a lot of people who wouldn't otherwise necessarily seek out these ideas and practices.
Yes.
Largely through Instagram.
Yeah.
Stephanie Rose TV, follow me.
Yeah.
And to just talk about these things in a less mystical sort of way. So I've almost kind of developed this brand as I'm the traffic reporter in the morning, but like you come to my Instagram and you see I'm tatted up, I'm into yoga, meditation, I'm vegan, I'm like the hippie traffic reporter, which is not like the usual persona of like a news professional who, and I think social media in general has given us much more access to people's real personalities, but it's not the typical perception. A lot of people say, like, you're not like the rest of them, if that makes sense.
Yes,
so,
that makes sense.
I'm actually trying to use the platform that I have in the news to spread, let's say, good news of like, what can you do that's good for yourself? How can you better your life and yourself?
Yeah, I wonder I wonder what that would look like if it was adopted more, nationally.
I think a lot of people are doing it. Good Morning America, which is ABC, has Dan Harris, who had a very similar situation. Dan Harris is a journalist who actually had a panic attack live on air, and that's what turned him towards learning about meditation. And he wrote a book, which I really recommend. I know that's like one of your later questions, but I'm going to just jump right in there.
Do it.
10% Happier by Dan Harris. And I love the title of this, 10% Happier, because the subtitle is Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. Because he was that kind of person who thought this is like woo-woo, you're putting on the tinfoil hat. Whatever. Yeah. He's a journalist. He approaches it from a very serious scientific degree. I'll admit, I tend a little more towards the woo-woo side personally, not when I'm explaining it to people, but like I'm more open. A lot of people weren't open. Dan Harris is a guy who wouldn't be the kind of guy that would do this. Now he has a great podcast as well, and wrote this book, and it's just all about how, meditation isn't this like cure-all. It's not going to change your entire life, but it will. If you commit to it, it will make you a little bit happier, a little bit calmer, and a little bit more better off. You have to do a lot of things to really affect that massive change. It's not just one thing.
I agree. I very much agree. And I'm fascinated with how physical fitness has become so trendy. People will literally wear workout clothes when they don't work out that day. But yet mental fitness is like still taboo. And I wonder what that looks like to make that equally trendy.
Yeah, I think that social media especially is starting to turn the tide on that. I think that our generation too, we're more open to it. I think that what starts to turn the tide is people being willing to openly talk about their own personal mental struggles, because we all have them. And like anybody who's going to stand up there, and like you said before, you have one face on TV, but then, what is that person really experiencing in their life? Like we put on this show and everybody's like, oh my God, you guys are just the happiest. And we're happy when we're doing it. We're having a good time. It is a show in the truest sense of the word of show business. But we're real people too, and real people struggle. And this is what I try to write about and talk about on Instagram. Like, I'm not afraid to share the fact that, I'm an anxious person. I need to meditate because I can't get out of my own thoughts and I have chaos in my own head. And that's how it is for all of us. So making it less of a stigma to mentally struggle doesn't mean you're a weak person. I think that you're the strongest kind of person if you have those struggles and yet you can still achieve goals and achieve things in your life.
Yes. Now I'm wondering,
right?
There's nothing I can add to that because you've said it all. And that's why it's like, I agree. That's my response. But what you got someone listening to this show right now and they've never meditated before and they might still think it's a little foo-foo, but you're kind of turning them on to the idea. What device, app, or thing would you suggest to them right now to dip their toe in the water?
Yeah. There's so many really good apps, and I think apps are good for people who really have no idea on what meditation is. There's Headspace is a really good one. The Calm app is great. Insight Timer is another one. And then actually Dan Harris has one too, 10% Happier, which is another meditation app. There's almost so many. It's just like fitness apps, like you said. They're everywhere. But the thing that I like to tell people is that you don't have to overcomplicate it either. I think everybody kind of imagines it as this very formal practice that has to have certain conditions. And I've been trained in very formal ways. I'm actually a certified yoga meditation teacher through my, journey with yoga meditation. So I know a lot of different formal practices, but the truth is you could just commit to sitting down for 3 minutes, inhaling and exhaling, but consciously inhaling and exhaling and trying to focus on your breath. The key that I always say to people is this: it's not about clearing out the thoughts in your head. It's about allowing the thoughts to come in, but not being so disturbed by them, not getting carried away into them. So like you have a thought that's like, oh, I need to plan this, surprise party for my best friend. And then like the usual way is that you have the first thought and then the next thought, and then you get sucked into like mental planning. When you're meditating, if you have that thought, the key is to kind of like catch it and say, oh, I'm having a thought that's not about me sitting here breathing in this moment. And to say, okay, that's fine, I'm having that thought, but then just to immediately come back to me sitting here breathing in this moment. And it's hard. It's not easy. Like you have to do that over and over and over and over and over again. But just like any other skill or habit, again, more, and over time, it becomes easier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like working out. It gets easier. The more you do it, it definitely does get easier.
It's a mental muscle. You have to build the muscle of resisting the pull of your thoughts, so to speak.
Yes. 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 Do you journal specifically about things, or are you just kind of writing down your thoughts as they come into your mind?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I'm big into like stream of consciousness journaling, which is just like I sit down and I have no idea what I'm gonna write down, and then it's just like emotional bloodletting. It's just like emotional diarrhea. It's like stuff I didn't even know was there is like suddenly like coming out, and I'm like writing so fast and so furiously that I can't even. If I go back and read my journals, half the time I can't even read what I wrote because it's there. Like we all have it all like jammed up inside of us, all these thoughts and feelings and emotions, and like it's just a way to get it out so that it's not circulating constantly in your mind.
Yeah. No, that's that's a really smart method and can save you a lot.
I think some people do better.
Yeah.
I think some people do better with like guided meditation, not meditations, journaling, like prompts and stuff. Some people do better with that. So you could try that. You got to try what works for you. But what works for me is just sit down and write. And it's amazing what comes out of that. Some insights that like, it's like, wow, where did that even friggin' come from?
Yeah. Oh my, yeah. Yes, I can only imagine. Is there, so as we're wrapping up here, I'm curious, along the lines of books, like most gifted books or favorite books that you have. I know 10% Happier by Dan Harris is one. It's a great book. Mm-hmm. Are there others?
It is a great book. Yeah, there's another one that I love. It's called Be Here Now, and it's by Ram Dass is the name of the author, and he is one of those 1970s LSD spiritualist guys, like who, the 60s, 70s, this stuff was very big, the yoga meditation. That's really when it actually first came to the West. He writes. It's not like a traditional book, like a novel. It's actually like these little, almost like vignettes or like little stories that he writes down, these little quotes. And it's all about that spiritual awakening. It's all about self-realization. It's all about these little insights into that inward journey. And I like the way that, and he illustrates it, and it was all kind of done in this very meditative way. And when you read it, it's like reading one long meditation. And it's really cool. I gift this to people all the time who are interested in getting into meditation and yoga, because it is like the essence of the philosophy behind it is everything that he kind of puts down there.
I've never heard of that. I'm going to check it out. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Very interesting. It's very visual, and it makes a very different experience, and it resonates. You read some of the things he says, and some of it is like kind of like hippy dippy, and you're like, what's he talking about? But then other things, you're like, this somehow I have not had this experience. Somehow I feel resonant with it.
That's great. Are there
Yeah.
common pieces of incorrect advice that you hear in your field, be it broadcast, meditation, yoga, any of them?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, I think that in broadcast, if I were to speak to that one first, there is a sense that I said earlier, it can be a cutthroat industry, and there's a sense that you have to be that kind of person sometimes. Like, you have to be the person who's willing to like do whatever it takes, or just like get ahead of everybody else, and it's very dramatic and it's very negative. I think that whole perception is not necessarily accurate. I have found that authenticity often is the best way, and you may not, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Like, that's the statement.
Yeah.
Sometimes the squeaky wheel does get the grease in these scenarios.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get the grease, like, unless I truly deserve it from, like, my true authentic self. And I think what we have to do is do everything authentically. Like, in meditation and yoga, to follow one specific way is the way. I think that's an often misrepresented piece of advice, because everybody does better with a different method, just like we're all different types of learners. Some people learn better visually, or through hearing, or through reading, or whatever. There's a different way for everyone. So one type of yoga works for one person, one type of meditation works for another, and it doesn't work for another. And again, it goes back to being authentic to who you are and what really reflects you as a person, and not just following these arbitrary standards of what someone else says you need to do in the situation.
Yeah.
In either situation.
No, I really like that. That's really well explained. That's okay. All right. Yeah, I'm like, wow, you're hitting so many what do you call these, like gems, golden nuggets of wonderful like knowledge bombs.
Thank you. I like to consider myself a knowledge bomber. I like that.
That would actually look great on a t-shirt.
I think that's kind of cool.
Okay, so now this is a curveball question here, and I actually didn't plan to ask you this, but I am curious. Is Rose your actual last name?
So Rose is my middle name, actually.
Okay, can I ask, are you willing to share what your last name is?
Yeah, it's Speranza. So my full name is Stephanie Rose Speranza. It's a very Italian last name. The reason why I adopted Stephanie Rose is because when I was, again, going back to the theater thing, when I was in theater, when I wanted to be an actress, when I was a kid, I always used to say, my stage name will be Stephanie Rose.
Oh.
And that first day when I was making the demo for News12, they put in, the graphic, and they put your name in. And from the control room, I could see they had put my name as Stephanie Speranza. And in that one moment, I said, this is your only chance. You're about to set it, like, for your whole career. I said, can you actually change that to Stephanie Rose? And so they did. And so actually at work, I go by two different names. When I'm on air, I'm Stephanie Rose. When I'm the office manager, I'm Stephanie Speranza.
How funny. How fun.
Yep.
It's such a great name. That's why.
Thank you.
Because my middle name is Avellino. And that's why I was like, I got to keep Clayton Howe. That's
a little too complicated. Usually it goes in the reverse. Well, and I think, too, that for me, like, from, like, that spiritual perspective, Stephanie Rose is the person that I created and became. I used to set a reminder in my phone that said, become Stephanie Rose, when I started on air, to just, like, try to, again, just, like, be that person and persona. And Stephanie Speranza was my given name, the name that I really didn't have a choice in. But Stephanie Rose was the person I was able to create for myself, the new version of myself.
Yeah, and I love that. I really love that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, if metaphorically speaking, if there's a word or a phrase that you could put on a billboard, does anything come to mind?
Yes, and it's so cliche.
Yeah.
So cliche. Breathe. like breathe. It is the one piece of advice I give to people. And in all the studies I've done on yoga and meditation, and it goes back to what I said before about people tending to overcomplicate this whole process, is that there are books written about this. The best thing you can do for stress and anxiety is to take deep breaths. And I teach people how to take deep breaths because we're all trained to breathe very shallowly. And it's incredible how transformative the breath can be. The breath and the mind are intertwined. So when the breath is calm and relaxed, you become calm and relaxed. When the mind is agitated, the breath is agitated. It goes both ways. So I think in the stress of a job, in the stress of being on the news, being on TV, going to an audition or an interview, or, just dealing with your everyday life, doing this one thing, taking a deep conscious breath, really learning how to get into that has been so tremendously helpful in my life. And I think it's just of benefit if people could be more conscious of it in their own lives.
Yes. Breathe. Yes. I love that. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up here? Any asks you have of the listeners? Anything else you want to share that I might not have touched on?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, like I mentioned before, if anyone wants to sort of hear more of my knowledge bombing, my knowledge bombs, we'll call it.
Knowledge bomber.
I'm the knowledge bomber. I drop them all over Instagram, so you can follow me at Stephanie Rose TV, and I'm putting out more videos and more. I do a lot of written content there as well to sort of try to explain and demystify these concepts as best I can. Sometimes I talk and I don't know if it makes sense, so just let me know if it doesn't.
100%. And I can imagine if this last hour of conversation is a sampling of what you talk about, then it'll make a whole heck of a lot of sense.
Well, thank you.
Well, Stephanie, this has been a joy. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been so fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Stephanie Rose.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.